Hello everyone, how are you? Today I'm gonna show you some simple techniques to animate floor tiles. You can take what you'll learn today and use it in a different project. I will also be sharing some extra tips, so make sure you watch until the end. Since I'll be covering the modeling process for all beginners out there, this video ended up a bit longer, but I promise you it will only take you a few minutes to create these animations. Okay, let's begin. First, let's cover the modeling for all the beginners out there. Let's go to camera view, and since I'm planning on making an isometric room, I want my render to be squared, and for that I need a 1:1 aspect ratio, which basically means the width and height will have the same resolution, in this case 1080 pixels. I'm also gonna change my camera type to orthographic just to get that isometric perspective. This is all optional, by the way. And let's change the orthographic scale. I also moved the camera a bit, and these are my final values. Now select the cube, and in edit mode, in face mode, we need to select these faces and delete. Add a solidify modifier to make the walls thicker, and add a bevel modifier if you like. Select the bottom face and separate by selection. Now we need to take the walls into edit mode, and in edge mode, select the bottom edges. I'm gonna enable the snapping tool just to work quicker and move the edges down. I want the floor to be a bit thinner, and in edit mode, let's move the walls again to match the floor. To create the floor tiles, I'm gonna duplicate the floor, escape, and move on the Z axis. Set the origin to geometry and scale. Move it down, and now move it to the corner. I'm gonna change the bevel settings and shade smooth. Now we need an array modifier to create several tiles. To scale them up, in edit mode, press A to select all the geometry and scale up or down depending on how big or small you want the tiles to be. Let's add one more and scale up a bit more. Let's move it to the corner. I'm gonna scale it a bit more. You can press Shift to change a value with finer control. Add another array modifier, but this time in the Y direction to complete the floor. Move it a bit more, and I'm gonna make some final adjustments. I want the tiles to be closer to each other. Let's scale it up a bit more, and I'm gonna scale it on the x-axis to fit the floor perfectly. And by following the same process, you can model smaller floor tiles, and it doesn't stop there. You can even create different shapes, such as planks, for example, or you can even make a rhombus pattern floor by playing with the constant offset. In this case, I will need to apply the array modifiers, apply several booleans, and delete the extra geometry. You might want to duplicate the tiles several times, since we're about to create different animations using this object as a basis. Method number 1 for animating the tiles. It is really simple. You only need to select the final frame, and in the count value press I to insert a keyframe. Now let's do the same with the other array modifier, but I'm gonna choose a different frame so the animation is not robotic. Insert a keyframe. Now go back a few frames, set the count to 1 and insert a keyframe. Choose a different frame and take the other array modifier to 1 and insert a keyframe. Let's see. In this case, the tile was set here in the corner, but you could move it here, for example, and the animation will go in this direction. You could also place the tile in the middle, and we will get this sort of animation. Here we will need an array modifier with a positive value to cover the right side, one with a negative value to cover the left side, and 2 more to cover the top and the bottom half. And since I have an extra column and an extra row, I will need to scale the tiles, since if I apply the modifier to delete the extra tiles, I will lose the animation. Back to our main project, we could leave it at that, or we could also make the tiles appear. To do that, go to the first keyframe and insert a scale keyframe. Go back 1 frame, scale to 0 and insert a scale keyframe. And I'm gonna move all the keyframes to the beginning of the timeline. Let's hit play. Now we can animate the relative offset to create some sort of assembly effect. Choose the final frame and insert a keyframe. Move a few frames back and change the factor settings so the tiles get separated. Insert a keyframe. Now let's repeat with the second array modifier. Pick the final frame, insert a keyframe, move a few frames back, change the factor setting and insert a keyframe. And here it is. You could also animate the other axis to come up with a more complex result. I'm gonna show you an example real quick. When you make a keyframe by pressing I, a keyframe for these 3 values appears, 1 for each axis. We could move the keyframe of only one of the axes if we wanted to. You could also delete the keyframe of only one of the axes. And by pressing this diamond shape, you can insert a keyframe for that individual axis only. I'm gonna move some keyframes. Let's see. Let's go back to our project. I feel some parts are too fast, so I'm gonna move these keyframes. Select all the keyframes, and now we could experiment with different easing and interpolation modes. I'm gonna stick with linear. And of course, you could animate any other setting and even mess around with other modifiers to add more effects to this animation. For the second animation method, I'm gonna use this duplicate that has no keyframes. Remember that I made some duplicates at the beginning of the video after I finished the modeling. Select the final frame and create a location keyframe. In frame 1, move the tiles up and create a location keyframe. In frame 5, insert a scale keyframe. And in frame 1, scale to 0 and create a scale keyframe. Let's see. I want to move some keyframes, so I need to expand these channel groups. Lock the scale keyframes. And I'm gonna move these location keyframes a bit. Let's see. Now the floor appears first and then it moves down. I think it's a bit slow, so I'm gonna move these location keyframes. And now let's lock the location keyframes, and I'm gonna move these scale keyframes. Like I've said in past videos, this is a trial and error process, and you can experiment by moving the keyframes differently. To recap, a scale keyframe in frame 1, location keyframe in frame 5, a scale keyframe in frame 9, location keyframe in frame 15. Let's select all the keyframes and we could change the easing mode. You could choose the same interpolation mode for all the keyframes, or select only a few. That is what I did to achieve this bounce effect in this past video. Link in the description. I'm gonna leave our main project aside for a moment to show you this subtle bounce effect you could also add. For that, we need to apply the solidify modifier, and in edit mode, select the bottom face and choose cursor to selected. And now in object mode, origin to 3D cursor. Since we changed the tile's origin, Now we need to fix the last location keyframe. Move it down a bit and insert a location keyframe. Now copy this final size keyframe. And a couple of frames after, we also need a scale keyframe. And now between those two scale keyframes, scale on the Z-axis and insert a scale keyframe. Let's see. Let's move the final keyframe. Now let's move this one. I'm gonna move this one a bit more, and here we have a subtle bounce effect. Back to our main project, let's improve our animation with the cascade effect. First, I'm gonna duplicate the tiles just to keep a copy with the modifiers. Take the area modifiers to the top and apply them. In edit mode, select everything and separate by loose parts. And now we have all the tiles as separate objects. I need to hide the mesh with the modifiers, and to turn this animation into this one, I need to change the origin of each tile. Right now they all have their origin in the same place. The logical thing to do, and don't do this by the way, will be to select all the tiles and set the origin to geometry. But now the animation has changed. Let's undo this. So what we need to do is take the transform values to delta transforms. Go to Apply, Animated Transforms to Deltas. The animation hasn't changed, as you can see. Now make sure you are in the last frame, and now we can set the origin to geometry, and voila! If you place the playhead somewhere else and then set the origin, you will end up with your animation looking differently. So remember to take the playhead to the end of the animation where the tiles are fully scaled. And now we need to move the keyframes of each tile. The first tile starts its animation in frame 1, so let's leave that one alone. I'm gonna move 4 frames forward, select the second tile, A to select all the keyframes and move them. And let's repeat. Move 4 frames, select the third tile, select all the keyframes, move the keyframes. And you need to repeat this with all the remaining tiles. Remember that you can choose the order of the tiles. For example, the animation could start from the middle outwards or from the corners inward. Let's continue placing the keyframes. Let's see, and here it is. And you could use the same animation method, but adding the rotation transform to the picture as well. Here I already applied my array modifier, so I'm gonna select all the objects to animate them at the same time. I made this animation by following the same process. Location keyframes, then scale keyframes, but I also insert some rotation keyframes to create a flip effect. As you can see, there are multiple animation possibilities. And then I just moved the keyframes to create a cascade effect. And of course, you can take what you learned today to animate other types of floors, or even use the same techniques to animate other types of objects. Remember, you can download the blend file to support the channel, where you'll find all the animations I showed you today, even the ones you saw in the intro of the video. Link in the description. And there are more techniques I haven't discussed today, but that, my friends, is a subject for another video. If you'd like me to create more tutorials like this one, let me know in the comments. And if you enjoyed this video, you are probably gonna like this one, where I teach other animation techniques that you can combine with what you learned today. As always, thanks for watching and see you in the next one. Bye!